Welcome back to Shabby Shack Studio. It's so great to have you back. Okay, today we are watercoloring. This is what was my cover page for my August Bujo, and this is the long version, as promised, of the watercolor I created, which is inspired or is inspiring my second textile and wallpaper collection, which is just fabulous. It's no secret that I am an Aussie girl and that I'm always inspired by the beautiful country landscape, flora, fauna, beautiful weather that is Australia. So you'll see that in much of my work. The colour palette is pretty special to me. It's just the most stunning sage ochre, this gorgeous terracotta clay, all the gorgeous greens and the stunning deep browns, the earthy tones. They're iconically Aussie, they're iconically Australian. So I'm just going to walk you through very quickly what I'm doing. I'm not going to have too much chit chat, so I'm going to just have a little bit of a chat with you at the beginning, a few products. Everything's linked for you below, so have no worry about that. But I will just give you a little bit of a share on what I'm doing, and then I'm going to just let the background music play while I create. So this video is just shy of 30 minutes, and it is in real time, so it's just me. This is a piece I created from my imagination, which is pretty much how I always create. I very, very rarely use an image, and if I do, it's purely inspirational, and my work often doesn't look anything really like it. So I could explain to you, and maybe that's something I need to do down the track if that's something that interests you, explain to you maybe what inspired me about an image, because what I take away from it is completely different. But again, I very rarely work from images. 99% of what I do is totally unscripted. As you can see at the beginning here, I only put in a very few very light pencil sketches, and they were purely for scale. It was just to give me an idea of where my Ayers Rock or my Uluru was going to sit, and then so that when I added the masking fluid, I knew where I did and didn't want it to sit. I particularly wanted the masking fluid only on the part at the base where I want to have my wildflowers. I didn't want it on the Ayers Rock piece at all. I'm happy to work with my white in and my texture and layer the colour in and the depth purely myself as I feel my way through. I just wanted to make sure that where the light would dance and reflect the stamens, the white petals, etc., that they were, when I was sketching and adding in the colour and, you know, quite brushing it on a little bit liberally and at times, then I wanted to make sure I didn't lose my white space at the bottom. So you will notice the masking fluid it's actually quite a good tool. It'll take you ages to work through it, and you can see that on my page there that it leaves, so this one in particular, you can get different coloured ones that have a coloured base that dry with that little bit of a colour. This one is supposed to be a white one, but it does dry with it looking a little bit fluorescent yellow, which you do see at the bottom of your jar or your bottle when it's been stored and in between uses. I encourage you really strongly to shake it and shake it and shake it and just keep turning it over and making sure that that yellow pigment mixes through your masking fluid before you dab it on. You'll also see to the left of the screen just a really cheap little brush that I use, very inexpensive, which is what I recommend you use for your masking fluid, and maybe keep it aside and only use it for that if that works for you, because even though you wash it really well, it still tends to make it go quite hard, so it's not really ideal when you're watercoloring later and you want those soft brushes to soak up the water and the color of the pigment and then create these beautiful soft strokes and allow your watercolor to process. I certainly couldn't paint with a brush that had been used for masking fluid, so I don't recommend that you use a good quality and expensive one. And the little point on this one does mean that I have used it in the past for lettering and things like that as well, and it's really easy to remove. I didn't actually video me removing it, but you can. I picked up a I have a favourite Faber-Castell Kneadable eraser that I use, and yes, I did mention the brand purely because all kneadable erasers are not created equal, and the Faber-Castell one is particularly good, and you can just use it and use it and use it, and it's fabulous, and it doesn't get tacky and yuck, whereas other brands do, which is disappointing. So you can pick up your kneadable eraser and you can rub that over and pick up your masking fluid. It'll just peel up, especially on this paper. This paper is a particularly fabulous one. I love the texture of this. It's a Mont watercolor pad. It's really inexpensive, so again, I've got that linked for you below. I'm a huge fan of inexpensive and using inexpensive resources, especially when you're starting out. I've been painting for quite a while and I still find that I love the inexpensive books. Doesn't mean that the quality is not there. This quality on this book is fantastic. It also has a perforated top, which I love. You can't see the present because I taped that, and I just taped it with just some cheap washi tape I pinched off my beautiful daughter. And I just wanted to have a little border that when I'm painting freely that I have a nice little edge at the end. I wanted it to be framed. So again, do it with or without, whichever suits you, but just be careful that you're not using a tape that is too tacky, because when you carefully remove it in the end, instead of it being so much fun as your border appears, it will become a headache because you'll be tearing your paper and your page and damaging your artwork. Okay, so the paints I use are a fantastic Royal Talens Van Gogh series that I picked up. The ones that I have came in a timber palette, came with brushes, everything is really fantastic little palette. Personally, I found that I actually prefer to remove the pans I want to use, especially because I like to create with the beginner in mind as well, and you don't have to have an expensive, huge palette of paints in order to be creative and to watercolor. So you can see in this painting I'm creating quite, by the end of it you'll see it's quite laid and complicated in the way the color has been added in. The brush strokes and the way I'm using them, you can see anybody can do this. It's simple, it's easy. I'm 100% painting very loosely. Again, it's up to you if you want it to be realer or if you have a different style than me. My style is quite loose, it's expressive, and I really do feel my way. As I said, I'm not painting from a picture, I'm not looking at anything else. It's purely me and my tools, my paper, my beautiful paints, my brush, and just my heart. This is just me completely creating something the way that I imagine it to be. I'm putting my shadows and my light and my, all those details, just doing it as I go, feeling it and totally enjoying the process and going to my happy place. So again, I've only used 5 colours of the Royal Talens paints. Again, they're linked for you below if you'd like to have a go at and just choose your pans individually. You can do that. You can actually go and just buy an empty pan that has space for these little pans to clip in. So an empty palette, sorry. These are half pans. So I generally link the half pan for you as long as I can find it for you below. And then they all just clip into the little channels and they hold securely. So if you want to have a whole pan sitting next to you, the whole palette next to you, go nuts. I actually love painting with this sweet little palette that I found from H&M, so you'll notice that too on the left. It's just a little ceramic piece I found in the discount rack, but I just love it, and I love that it's got all these little spaces in it. The paints don't, it's not angled badly, so the paints don't run where I don't want them to run. When I touch them, when I'm mixing them at the beginning, I purely do it so that the colours will meld, and then I can use, all these different colours that they've created together, which is, for me, is exactly how Mother Nature works. And quite often what I'm painting is exactly that. It's botanicals, and I love to paint fruit. I love to paint organic items, so flowers and all those kind of things. So the colour doesn't have necessarily a very clear edge. So for me, I love when the colours create their own as well. It's a happy surprise. Okay, so they're the Royal Talens paints. The brushes I use, I get asked a lot. They're actually really inexpensive acrylics. The one you can see in my hand is a 10 point, but it's one that I picked up when I was on holidays in Barcelona. So I've picked up other brushes, I've picked up more expensive brushes, and I always go back to this one. I love the point on it. I love that the belly holds lots of water when I want it to. I love how it holds the pigment. I kind of like that it's not, that it's natural, that it's synthetic and not animal hair. I mean, I'm sure that no animals are harmed in the making, but I kind of like that it's synthetic and that I don't have to worry about that or who made it or where it went from. But I also love that along with this brush comes a happy memory of a holiday with my family. So when I pick it up, it reminds me of this gorgeous little market that we happened upon, and the characteristic sellers, and just the fabulousness of the day, and it takes me back to that. So quite often pieces I pick up and I use the pieces I found along the way, not necessarily that I stood in an art store and spent a lot of money. This brush was like, seriously, it was, you know, a couple of euro. It was a cheap brush. And I use it and use it and use it, and it always looks great. It holds its shape, it holds its point. I do take care of it, but I don't condition it or whatever else either. I just rinse it off well and store it nicely, and I'm, you know, relatively gentle with the bristles. So again, if you're a person that wants to use a certain brush, or if you're like me and you like to work, you know, 100% from your heart, and my story of my brush and that speaks to you, then feel free to wander around and see what calls to you. Okay, so my painting itself, as I said, it's expressive and it's fluid, and it's I 100% am just feeling my way through. So you'll see me, sometimes the paint will touch where I don't want it to touch, or you'll see me mop up a mistake by just getting some nice fresh water, which you cannot see, it's out of screen. While I'm mentioning water, I always have a couple of jars of nice fresh water that are out of screen, generally on my right side because I'm right-handed, and some paper towel for blotting. It's always good to have another piece that you're not blotting on, that you keep handy. So if you do find that the colours bleed because you've touched something that's not quite dry and you're not wanting it to bleed with that particular colour, or you want it to have a sharper shape, don't be worried about just rinsing that brush off, adding some fresh water to your pad, and then mopping it up with that fresh paper towel. It'll literally just completely remove it, and then you can just give it a second to dry. You'll see me do this quite a few times during this process. So if you want to keep watching to the end, as I said, it's under 30 minutes. It shows me, you know, fix up a few errors. It shows me come back as the paint's drying here and there, and layer in the colour and add depth. So I hope you really enjoy. I do get a lot of people saying, can I please I just want a little bit of a discussion about it, a couple of tips, and then I just want to be left to enjoy maybe some background music and the actual process. Okay, if you're still here, this is me just popping back in to say thank you so much for your support. Do click subscribe if you'd like to see more watercolors like this. Do let me know how you felt doing this, or tag me if you create something gorgeous and you wouldn't mind sharing. And I hope you really have enjoyed the process today and the background music. And I'm about to remove the tape at the end. Such a satisfying process, and I'll show you the final artwork.